Hey everyone, it's Andrew with the Alien Hunter here. Welcome to the channel. I've been closely following the story of retired Air Force weather observer Dr. Charles Hall for probably over 5 years now. I read his first book, Millennial Hospitality, and as a believer in ET, I was definitely thrilled by the story. And if you haven't read it, you should definitely go give it a look. He wrote an entire series of books on his personal experiences in the Air Force in the mid to late 60s. Dr. Hall is now a nuclear physicist and is recounting his remarkable story to the public through the series, and every so often he speaks live at a conference or a book signing. So it goes like this. In 1964, he enlists in the Air Force, and he arrives at what was the former Nellis Air Force Base, which is now called Creech Air Force Base in Indian Springs, Nevada. So he's there from 1965 to 1967. So for 2 years, he was out in the desert at Range 4, which if you're looking at this map here, you can see the different places where he's plotted out his experiences with the Tall Whites. He claims he made contact with an ancient civilization of alien beings that we now call the Tall Whites. So Charles became somewhat of an ambassador to these beings, and he shared a number of extraordinary experiences with them in the desert. Apparently, these ET have been coming to our planet for over 3,000 years, and sometime around the 50s made an agreement with our military to utilize land in the desert of Nevada for their base in exchange for technology given to our government. He says they reach nearly 8 feet tall, which I'm assuming is why they appropriately got the name the Tall Whites, and they live to about 700 to 800 years old. Their planet is much warmer than ours, and with their craft, they obviously travel at the speed of light or faster to reach our planet. So he explains and recounts a number of amazing experiences out there. Obviously that he was terrified. He had no idea why they were making their presence known to him, and all of these crazy things that happened to him in just a short span of 2 years. He goes on to explain that he was in a long line list of weather observers who had quit or left their job responsibilities because they came into contact with one of the ET, I guess they called Range 4 Harry, and most of them would quit, run away, be terrified, and couldn't perform their duties. And it took until Charles came along in 65 to keep a weather observer at his location, Range 4. And so if you're looking at the map where he shows each individual location where he had interactions and encounters with the beings, you can see Range 4 and all the way through the valley there in Indian Springs, just off of the base. For several miles, there were different points and bases and almost like recreation areas for these people, and a parking area for the scout craft, which was a smaller aircraft, I guess, for navigating around once they traveled here in the larger craft, which was their deep space craft. So he explains that their suits allowed them to levitate and put off a glowing white luminescent light, and that their electronics allowed them to communicate with him by placing thoughts in his mind. Which you can almost imagine, it's like we have people that experiment and explore telepathic abilities. The government in the Cold War employed people to, telepathically try to determine what the enemy was doing, where certain locations of potential missiles and any threat to America might be located. So we understand that there are these capabilities, but Charles explained that these beings, the Tall Whites, had that capability, but it was amplified by an electronic system in their suit. And so he said they would look at his temple specifically and place thoughts in his mind. And even though they had learned English, they're a very advanced, much more intelligent civilization, obviously technologically beyond us. Clearly they are advanced beyond our evolution at this point, and that's why they're here. And he did say that they would look at his temple, that they would place thoughts into his mind, and that's how he would communicate with them, that they were, terrified really of humans, and that their bones were brittle, that they came obviously from another planet that was much warmer than ours, and they had to go back there if they got hurt in other places in the galaxy to heal properly, which is also interesting. But he explained the gravity force field of the Earth, that we have gravity waves, and so when they come in, their ships are unstable because our gravity flows in waves across the Earth, and so almost like the ocean, our gravity waves resonate and vibrate, I guess you should say. And so as they come in, their craft are unstable because those waves are flowing, and they're trying to stabilize their craft. And apparently that is also why they explained to him that they would come in and out of our atmosphere on a full moon. So anytime now I see or hear a full moon is coming that night, I always kind of keep an eye up at the stars to see if I'm catching a glimpse. The truth is always stranger than fiction, and obviously there are a lot of credible people in this field of research of ET and UFOs that talk about disclosure making its way out through not only the media but also Hollywood. And so it's funny that Charles's explanation kind of reminds me of that, for how they would hypnotize him with a technology similar to what we see in Men in Black. He made reference to a pin that puts people to sleep. So I guess sort of a pin that they would point at him, a white pin device. And there are other people that have claimed this similar thing. One other guy that I saw online, and if I find the link, I'll try to put it up for you guys. But that they would point this white pin at him, and that it would sort of put him in a hypnotized state, and he would wake up several hours later and realize that he was missing all of this time. Didn't know where he was, never hurt or anything like that, but he later said that that was so that they could feel safe with their children around him, or to let their children sort of play near humans. But he also talked about their propulsion system, and I'm always particularly interested in anti-gravity technology, because I think that's really at the center of this whole discussion, and why it's being kept under wraps. Because if these technologies are here and have been here for thousands of years, why don't we use them to better this planet and our evolution as a race? But going back to what he said, there's 1,000 miles of fiber optic cables apparently that generate subatomic particles in their ships, and that's what they use to create these force fields. And so he explains that there are technically more force fields in this science than Einstein had discovered. And he said their crafts lifted off the desert floor in complete silence, reaching speeds he calculated at over 8,000 miles per hour. He said that it was so fast that if you blinked your eyes, you'd miss it. And this, if we understand it, creates 15 times the force of gravity. So there's no way a human, with our natural laws of nature, could survive these speeds, without some sort of a field around the craft that obviously keeps the passengers safe inside. This story, the Indian Springs story, Charles Hall's story about the tall whites, so fascinated us that we went out to Area 51, and then of course over to Indian Springs, where Dr. Hall had these experiences. And I can say from personal experience, it's a very peculiar and creepy town, and my wife would account to this as well. Just past the Air Force Base entrance, it's a very Area 51 type base, and there's Department of Energy signs, and this is where they tested the nuclear bombs. All of that crazy technology is happening right out here in these, probably 20 to 50 square miles in the Nevada desert. And you feel it. You feel the weight of the town when you drive. I mean, Indian Springs is a small little town with this, what is now Creech Air Force Base. And you feel it when you drive up. And we went into the gas station and asked the lady if she'd seen anything strange. And she was like, this isn't Area 51, which is technically true, but it is, Creech, and it was Nellis, where Dr. Hall had these experiences with the tall whites. And so that was cool, and we experienced it for ourselves. And it's got a creepy just sterile, almost hollow feeling to it. It's something in the air there, and so it brought at least some dimension to the story for us, being able to picture Indian Springs now in our mind, when doing research on this. But I was looking through these pictures of our trip out there to Indian Springs, and as I was doing that, I was like, man, I want to get on Google Earth, Google Maps, and take a look through the base and the desert there. Looking at this picture that Charles shows us, I wanted to see for myself what the landscape looks like and see this, these dry lake beds, and kind of just peruse around Google Earth. And so I pulled it up, and I'll put the link here in the video for you guys to check it out as well. But as you can see here, I've pulled it up, and this is Indian Springs, and right here is the base. It's a little town. You're right here in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and this area here are the dry lake beds, and going straight out from behind the base is where Range 4 was, as you saw in the pictures, and where Dr. Hall worked. And so I immediately was just kind of searching around. I wanted to see this area. What did it look like up close? I love the satellite imagery that we're able to investigate this for ourselves. And right here I noticed what looked like some landing strips or some signals for air traffic control of some sort, and I zoomed in, and as you can see, we have some sort of a jet emblem here on the sand, and they've drawn these circles, and then I don't know if these are some kind of almost like entrances they look like, and here is another one on the left, which also, if you can see, looks like it was moved recently. I'm not sure what these are, if they're runways, if they're what, but I knew it was fascinating. I mean, it's right near where apparently they used to park their scout craft. And so as I continued to search the area, I found some more interesting things, and I wanted to show you guys what we found. So this is Range 4. We're going up a little bit more to where they used to play and where he had some interactions, seeing them run and all this crazy stuff. But as I was going up here where he says their deep craft were parked, I started to look around a little bit closer and notice some, abnormal things right here at the base of this mountain. And they, his story, he claims that if you've read any interviews or watched any of his live speaking engagements, he claims that there were holes cut in the base of these mountains and that they would park their craft inside of these bases. And I noticed as I got close, this looks like the entrance or something that could open up. This is a different color from the sand. It's very obviously, not in place. And then as I'm doing as I'm digging around, I noticed this incredibly luminescent glowing orb off to the left. I don't know, it's probably not even 0.2 of a mile away, and it looks like almost like a being. I mean, you can look at it for yourself. I'm putting the link below. As you zoom out, you can see it even from a distance, but it's right where he said he had these interactions with them. He said that they were luminescent with their suits on, and as you get even this close, you can see a very luminescent, glowing, what looks like some sort of anomaly in this photo, in this satellite imagery. And as you look around, you don't see it anywhere else. So my question is, what are these things? And are these an entrance to their base? Does this prove it? And what is this? What is this luminescent, glowing object out in the middle of this desert where you see nothing else of that nature next to these anomalies, these what look like openings for potentially a base or for them to park their craft? So I was fascinated by that. I wanted to show you guys. I'll put the link down there and you can check it out for yourself and do all the exploring you want of this story as well. So leave a comment, tell me what you guys think. Make sure and subscribe to the channel. There's gonna be a ton more great content like this coming your way. Just sharing information and starting a dialogue here with you guys about these phenomenon and getting your input as well. This is a story I've been fascinated with for a very long time, and I'd love to just know what you think about it. I mean, the imagery, the satellite imagery definitely was creepy. I've been to Indian Springs. I've driven up and down that road. I've seen the Department of Energy, Mercury Road entrances, and it's very Area 51, which obviously it's close to that anyway, in proximity to or adjacent to it. It's creepy, but this guy's story to me is different than something you could just dismiss. And so I would encourage you to read the books, check it out for yourself, and let me know what you think. Many more videos coming your way very soon, so make sure to subscribe and remember to keep looking up and keep looking out. Thanks, guys.